President Trump claiming House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is playing games with border security, warning about the dangers of not building a wall. All this as the deadline looms for another government shutdown, now a little more than 2 weeks away. Blake Berman is live at the White House for us. Blake?
Hi there, Dana. We did indeed hear from both of them today. Nancy Pelosi up on Capitol Hill first said that when that conference committee meets, she made it clear that those 17 Democrats and Republicans, whatever comes from that, will not include a dime of new wall funding. After that, the president also made clear his stance, saying that he believes that walls work, so he will not support that. Pelosi, though, did say that she could get behind the idea of new physical barriers, as she put it. But watch here when President Trump was asked about Pelosi's comments. Listen.
They go like this. You know what a Normandy fence is? 300 miles of this, so that cars cannot go by. If the president wants to call that a wall, he can call it a wall. He's referencing it. We already have almost 700 miles of wall.
No, because if there's no wall, it doesn't work. She's just playing games. So if there's no wall, it doesn't work.
The president in the recent weeks had moved off the language of a wall by saying that he wants what could be steel slats or a physical barrier. But today, he started talking about a wall once again, his signature campaign promise, by tweeting this, saying, quote, "Let's just call them walls from now on and stop playing political games. A wall is a wall." Dana, the president also made clear that declaring a national emergency along the southern border come February 15th is still very much an option.
Indeed. Okay, let me also ask you, he talked about his intelligence chiefs in this press conference.
He did. The intelligence chiefs were up on Capitol Hill earlier this week. They gave a much different assessment as it relates to Iran than what we've heard from President Trump in the past. The intel chief said, as they see it, they do not feel that Iran is trying to track down a nuclear weapon, or at least get the capability for that. The president yesterday took to Twitter saying that the, quote, intelligence people are, quote, extremely passive and naive. He also suggested that they go back to school. Well, just a little while ago, the president was asked about their comments, and he said that he feels he will be vindicated.
I disagree with certain things that they said. I think I'm right, but time will prove that. Time will prove me right, probably. I think Iran is a threat. I think it's a very big threat.
But the number two in the Senate, John Thune, also said that when it comes to national security matters, he feels that President Trump should stay off of Twitter, and he said that we should trust the judgment of the intelligence community. Dana?
All right, Blake, thank you.
The president tweeted about what you were just saying, and it reads simply, Mitch, as in Mitch McConnell, use the nuclear option and get it done. Our country is counting on you. Let's go to Geraldo Rivera. He joins us right now.
How long ago did he tweet that?
The problem, Geraldo, the problem with that is the president lost, I think, at least two Republican votes. Corker left town, and Flake is not on board. So he's down to 49.
I feel like I have a deck chair on the Titanic right now. It's going to be one of those crazy days. Nobody, Griff mentioned, nobody knows how today turns out. Right. That's for sure. I don't see how in the world the president can win in the United States Senate when he needs 60 votes. He has 51 at most, and a couple of Republicans have already deserted for the long weekend or the holiday weekend. I just don't know how he can resolve this without a government shutdown. It seems doomed from the get-go. It seems that the nightmare scenario in the president's mind wasn't the chaos of shutting down the government. It was George H.W. Bush saying, read my lips, no new taxes. The president facing the specter of being called, someone who let down his side by abandoning the wall in the first version of the bill that passed for the continuation of the government, the continuing resolution. Right. Did not have any funding for the wall. He wants the wall. He's insisting on the wall. He got the House vote, the last hurrah of the Republican majority in the House. Right. He has zero chance of getting 60 votes in the United States Senate. So it seems like we're heading for a shutdown. I worry about the stock market, not to mention Syria and Afghanistan. There are a lot of unsettling things as we approach the weekend before Christmas,
Indeed.
Lady and gentlemen.
Well, apparently the president said yesterday, he told the group of Republican leadership that went to the White House after Mark Meadows gave him a call and said, hey, come on, conservatives will have your back. The president said, I am okay with the shutdown. Now, I've heard, given your premise, where it looks like in 15 hours and 54 minutes there's going to be a shutdown, I've heard from administration officials that apparently they have found $5 billion that they could reprogram for the wall or construction of some sort of border security. So in that way, he could still lose in the Senate. He won in the House, but ultimately he's going to have $5 billion from some other department.
Well, $5 billion is a minuscule drop in the bucket in the multi-trillion-dollar federal budget. It is not really a lot of money. I guarantee you, however, given the staunch resistance to the president's plan to build a wall, that every dollar he tries to spend from wheresoever it comes will be attacked with an avalanche of lawsuits and all kinds of political criticism. I think that we're in one of those jams. You know, the worst thing is when you have two strong negotiators and they are in positions that neither can abandon. The results then are just a kind of slugfest, mutual assured destruction.
How about the way you and I live our lives, Geraldo? We meet halfway with people.
That's exactly right.
You know, Geraldo, I'm glad you brought up.
It'll be as chaotic as us.
I'm glad you brought up the point about George H.W. Bush when he said, "I'm not going to raise taxes," and taxes were raised. Because I was thinking about this with President Trump. Why would it be his fault if this wall doesn't ever happen when he can't get it through the House or the Senate? But they do blame the president, don't they? How does the president get around that when he doesn't have the votes? Is that still his fault?
It started, I hear you, Ainsley, it started with our dear friend Ann Coulter. She started saying gutless president with a gutless, wall-less president. Not as brutal as that. The president unfollowed Ann after he saw that. Not as brutal as that. You had commentators as far-ranging as our own Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, Breitbart. You had Drudge. You had a lot of the conservative media saying to President Trump, listen, if you don't stand for the wall, you don't stand for anything. It was your signature issue. It's why you got elected.
And he was able to.
You can't go quietly into the good night. So he's going to fight.
Geraldo, when you were just talking, the president tweeted again, "Thank you, Steve Daines, for being willing to go with the so-called nuclear option in order to win on desperately needed border security. Have my total support." So obviously the president is now putting immense pressure on Mitch McConnell. Mitch, figure a way to get it done. I was reading yesterday, I think it was NPR, that there's some suggestion the deal that could be had in the Senate would involve giving Chuck Schumer that money for the Gateway Tunnel, which is something he desperately wants. I think it could be something like $30 billion. There could be some horse trading there.
Well, you know, they say about a government, it's like making sausage. You don't want to see how it is done. That's the kind of compromise that seems totally appropriate to me in the horse trading that goes on in D.C. But it would seem that it would be very difficult to make a deal, an obvious quid pro quo deal like that, in the plain view of the entire planet. It's the kind of thing best done quietly. You do this, I'll do this. But now, with everybody watching and such emotions in play here, these are not issues that are, Secretary Mattis resigning, walking away, seemingly in protest to the president's policies toward NATO and our allies, and pulling out of Syria and maybe pulling half the troops out of Afghanistan. These are very big deals. Mattis was, I don't like to say adult in the room because I think the president is in far more control than people generally credit him for. But there's no doubt that Secretary Mattis was a stabilizing influence. There are plenty of qualified people. Our own Jack Keane, four-star general, commentator. My friend John F. Campbell, four-star hero in Afghanistan and Iraq. He could do the job. Plenty of good choices, but it's going to be an unsettled period, and I really I'm biting my nails about what the stock market does when it opens.
Well, it's going to go down. Geraldo, 30 seconds. Do you side with the president's foreign policy, which is with Rand Paul, or do you side with Bolton, Jack Keane, the Secretary of State, and now the soon-to-be former Secretary of Defense when it comes to policies in Afghanistan and Syria?
At the risk of alienating some of the best friends I have in life, those wearing the uniform of the United States or those recently retired, I have to say I'm more with Rand Paul and Donald Trump on this. I think that we could, for instance, Syria was never our strategic interest. It was always Russia and Iran. It's a Shiite country. I think that we could help the Kurds by establishing a Bagram-like base in Kurdistan on the Iraqi side of the border. We could keep the Kurds, our allies, safe with a base and minimal, troops on the ground.
We abandoned them.
We cannot abandon the Kurds. Whatever we do, we have to protect our allies. People that fight and die for us, we've got to make sure that we have their backs.
Geraldo, thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you and Eric out in Cleveland.
Merry Christmas to you. Love you guys.
We love you too. Thank you.